My name is Ava Collins, and I'm 29 years old. It all started the day my grandfather passed away. He was the kind of man who didn't say much, but when he did, people listened. He built his life from nothing, worked 2 jobs, saved every penny, and turned it into something real. When he died, he left behind a $3 million estate. We all knew he had money, but no one expected it to be that much. The day we sat in the lawyer's office, I remember my heart beating fast. My older sister, Claire, sat beside me with her arms crossed, acting like she already knew what was coming. She always thought she deserved more attention, more money, more everything. Then the lawyer opened the envelope. To Claire Richardson, he read, "I leave the family business, Collins Tech Group, valued at $2 million. Claire's mouth curved into a proud smirk. She leaned back like she had just won some kind of prize. To Ava Collins, the lawyer continued, "I leave the Westbrook apartment, valued at $1 million and all its contents." Everyone looked at me, waiting for me to speak. But I didn't say anything. I just nodded and smiled. On the outside, I looked calm. On the inside, I was shaking. That apartment wasn't just real estate. It was the place Grandpa and I spent weekends making puzzles and watching old movies. Every corner held a memory. I didn't care that Claire got the company. I was happy with what I had until things started to go wrong. But back then, I stayed quiet. I had no idea what my sister would try next, or how far she'd go to take everything from me. After the inheritance, Claire acted like she was some kind of queen. She posted all over social media, CEO life, building my empire, and success runs in the family. Honestly, I ignored it. I didn't have the energy for her drama. I was just focused on turning my apartment into a peaceful home. But behind those flashy posts, Claire was drowning. The company Grandpa left her, Collins Tech Group, was strong when he ran it. He knew how to keep things in balance. Claire, on the other hand, had no idea how to lead. Within 6 months, she fired the top managers, hired her boyfriend Eric as business development head, and started spending company money like it was her personal piggy bank. By the time I visited the office for a legal signing, the place looked empty. Desks were half vacant, the reception lights were flickering, and the accountant, who used to call me Sunshine when I came by as a kid, whispered that people hadn't been paid in weeks. I stayed out of it. It wasn't my company, and I wasn't going to babysit my sister. But deep down, I knew something big was coming. Claire never handled failure well, and if the business failed, she'd be desperate. And desperate people do dangerous things. Then one day, out of nowhere, she called me. "Hey," she said, trying to sound casual. "Are you still living at Grandpa's old apartment?" I paused. My gut told me something was off.
Yeah.
Why? No reason. Just thinking about downsizing. You know, city apartments are in high demand. She hung up before I could ask anything else. That night, I went to my bedroom, locked the door, and reached for the painting hanging above my dresser. It was an old oil painting of a horse that Grandpa once told me to never move unless I had to. Behind it, taped to the back of the wooden frame, were the real apartment ownership papers, signed and notarized. I smiled. I had a feeling I'd need them soon. A few weeks later, I decided to take a break from everything and book myself a trip to Hawaii. It was something I'd always dreamed of: sunshine, ocean breeze, long walks on the beach with no stress or phone calls. I didn't even tell Claire I was going. I just left. The second day into my trip, I got a weird text from my neighbor back in the city. "Hey, Ava, everything okay? I saw some movers going into your building today. Thought you said you weren't moving?" My stomach dropped. I called the building manager right away. He said a woman claiming to be me had hired movers and handed over documents showing she sold the apartment to a private buyer. According to them, the deal was already closed. I couldn't believe it. I booked the first flight back. My heart raced the entire way home. The idea of Claire selling my home while I was away made my blood boil, but I kept thinking about that painting. When I finally arrived, everything was a mess. Furniture was being taken out. Some guy in a suit stood near the door, holding a clipboard. Claire was there too, standing proudly, like she'd just closed a $1 billion deal. I knew you'd show up, she said, fake smiling. It's done. The papers were in your locker, Ava. You really should be more careful with your things. I didn't reply. I walked past her, went into my bedroom, and pulled the painting off the wall. I turned it around and gently peeled the tape. There it was, the original ownership document, perfectly sealed in a folder. My heartbeat finally slowed down. I came back out, holding the real deed. The buyer looked confused. Claire went pale. These are the real papers, I said calmly. Whatever she gave you is fake. And I have surveillance footage of her breaking into my old locker to steal them. Claire tried to speak, but her words got stuck. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder labeled just in case, and pressed play. It showed Claire and Eric late at night, cutting the lock and digging through my things. The man with the clipboard immediately stepped back and made a call. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I laughed. I laughed so hard I nearly cried. While I stood there holding the real deed, Claire tried to spin her usual lies. Ava, this is just a misunderstanding. Maybe the papers got mixed up, or maybe... I cut her off. Don't even try. You broke into my locker. You stole what you thought were the ownership papers. But I've been ready for you for a long time. The man who had bought the apartment, the one standing with the clipboard, was now furious. He wasn't just some random buyer. He was a real estate investor, and he'd already wired hundreds of thousands of dollars to Claire's account. You sold me an apartment with forged documents, he barked. Do you even know what kind of legal trouble that brings? I looked at him calmly and said, I'll cooperate fully. I've got the real paperwork, the video evidence, and witnesses. You've got the wrong criminal. Just then, my building manager showed up with 2 police officers. I handed them the flash drive with the locker footage and the real deed. The officers asked a few questions, took statements from the mover, the buyer, and the building staff. Then one of them turned to Claire. Claire Richardson, Officer Daniel said, you're under arrest for fraud, attempted theft, and providing false documentation for a property sale. Eric had already disappeared. No surprise there. Claire's face twisted into a panicked mess as they cuffed her right there on the sidewalk. I didn't say a word. I just watched as she was led into the police car. But it didn't end there. 2 days later, I got a call from the real estate buyer's lawyer. He was suing Claire for every dime she took from him, including damages. And that wasn't all. I called Grandpa's attorney, who handled the original will. There's something you should know, he said. Your grandfather included a special clause in the will. If either of you tried to steal from the other, they'd lose all inheritance rights, including any remaining business shares or trust funds. I smiled so wide I could barely contain it. Claire wasn't just getting arrested. She was about to lose everything. A week after Claire's arrest, things moved quickly. She was released on bail, but her face was all over the local news. Headlines called her the fake deed heiress and greedy sister sells apartment that wasn't hers. She tried to hide from the public, but the damage was done. Meanwhile, I met with Grandpa's old lawyer to go over the special clause in the will again. He confirmed everything. By law, since Claire had committed fraud to take what wasn't hers, she'd automatically forfeit the remaining assets tied to the family estate. That included the last 15% stake in the tech company that hadn't yet been liquidated, a private investment account Grandpa had left in reserve for emergencies. All of that now came to me. But I wasn't done yet. I hired a financial advisor to quietly track the status of the failing company Claire had left behind. It was bankrupt, but the name still held value. So I did something bold. I created a shell company and bought the remaining pieces of the company for a few $1,000s. And guess what? After a few smart hires and some rebranding, the company started making a small comeback. Not overnight, but steady. Clean energy, smart software upgrades, and most importantly, no Eric. A month later, Claire applied for an entry-level marketing job under a different name. And guess who was reviewing applications that day?
Me.
I didn't reject her. I called her in. She walked into the office, not realizing who ran it now. When she saw me sitting at the head of the table, her face turned white. You, she whispered. Surprise, I said, smiling. You're not getting the job. But thanks for dropping by. You helped build this place, by destroying it first. She stormed out, and I felt no guilt. After that final meeting with Claire, something inside me shifted. For years, I had lived in the shadow of her ego, trying to keep the peace, staying quiet to avoid fights, accepting less so she wouldn't lash out. But not anymore. Now I had control of my life, my future, and even the company she once bragged about owning. The first thing I did with the rebuilt company was change its name. Collins Tech Group became Horizon Loop Innovations, a fresh start for a business that deserved better leadership. I hired people who believed in hard work and fairness, people who reminded me of Grandpa. Back at home, I redecorated the apartment. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to make it fully mine. I kept the old horse painting where it was, though. Every time I looked at it, I felt like Grandpa was still watching over me, nodding in quiet approval. Then one evening, I did something symbolic. I took the fake apartment papers, the ones Claire had tried to use to steal my home, and had them professionally framed. Below them, I added a small engraved plaque. The price of greed. The reward of caution. I hung it near the front entrance, where everyone could see it as soon as they walked in. Not to brag. Not to rub it in. But to remind myself and anyone who ever tried to take advantage of me again that I wasn't the same Ava anymore. I wasn't afraid to stand up for myself. I wasn't afraid to outsmart the people who thought they could break me. And I wasn't afraid to live boldly. It's been over a year now since everything happened. Claire was found guilty of fraud, attempted grand theft, and misuse of legal documents. The court gave her a 2-year prison sentence, plus a hefty fine she still owes to the real estate buyer. Eric was never seen again. Rumor has it he fled the country the moment things got serious. Typical. As for me, I'm still living in the apartment Grandpa left me. It's worth even more now, thanks to rising property values and the quiet upgrades I made. But honestly, it's not the money that matters. It's the peace. Every morning, I drink my coffee by the window, where the sun hits just right. I work on the balcony sometimes, answering emails from the Horizon Loop team. The business is growing slowly but steadily, and I've been able to offer internships to young people who need a first chance, just like Grandpa once did for others. I still visit Grandpa's grave every month. I tell him what's new, how the company is doing, what I fixed around the house, and how I finally found my voice. I tell him thank you not just for the apartment, but for the lesson he left hidden in that painting. Be prepared. Trust your gut. Stay quiet, but never be blind. And sometimes, when the wind rustles the trees around the cemetery, I imagine him whispering back, "You did good, kid." So here I am, still standing, still smiling, and finally free. And to anyone who ever thinks they can take advantage of the quiet one, I say this: be careful who you underestimate.